17,000 islands. 1,000 languages. 1 heartbeat. This is Indonesia, the emerald giant straddling 2 oceans. A land where volcanoes touch the sky, rainforests cradle the oldest life on Earth, and cultures older than many nations still thrive. Yet beneath its beauty lies a paradox, one of the richest lands on Earth, still searching for its destiny. We begin our journey from the clouds. Look down, a patchwork of islands stretching from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. Coral reefs glowing like jewels, mountains crowned with mist, rivers of molten lava carving new earth. Few nations are so blessed. Few nations carry such promise. Beneath this breathtaking scenery lies a treasure chest. Nickel, copper, cobalt, tin, bauxite, coal, and gold, the very elements that build the modern world. In Papua, the Grasberg mine glitters with some of the largest gold reserves on the planet. In Sulawesi and Maluku, nickel feeds the batteries of electric cars. Indonesia is not just a country, it is a vault of tomorrow's wealth. Think about it. Every smartphone battery, every electric vehicle, every green energy storage system could trace its elements here. Without Indonesia's minerals, the world's clean energy transition would slow. And yet, for decades, these riches have left the archipelago as raw exports. Others refine, others innovate, others profit. Indonesia remains the quarry rather than the craftsman. But imagine another path. Imagine if the refining, the battery plants, the advanced materials, the clean technologies were built here. Imagine an Indonesia where its minerals power its own industries, its own people. This is the question of our time. Will Indonesia continue to export its future, or will it finally build that future at home? Our story begins in the deep green jungles of Papua. Here, mountains rise like cathedrals and rivers flow copper and gold. The Grasberg mine is one of the largest gold and copper mines on Earth. Every day, thousands of tons of ore are hauled from the mountain's heart. For the workers, it's a livelihood. For the nation, it's potential power. Travel west to Sulawesi. Beneath the red earth lie vast deposits of nickel, the key ingredient for lithium-ion batteries. As the world races to build electric cars and renewable energy systems, nickel demand explodes. Indonesia now supplies more than any other nation. Yet most of it leaves these shores unprocessed, turned into profits elsewhere. Why not here? This is not only about minerals. It is about sovereignty over value. The world has entered a new age of resources, where critical minerals decide the future of technology. Indonesia stands at the center of this new map. It can choose to remain a supplier of raw materials, or it can become a manufacturer of dreams. We move to Kalimantan, on the island of Borneo. Here, vast coal reserves have powered Southeast Asia for decades. But the future is shifting. Coal's era wanes. Renewable energy rises. Will Kalimantan's wealth be left behind, or will its workforce transition to building solar panels, wind turbines, green hydrogen plants? The choices are urgent, but the opportunities are real. On these islands, nature's bounty is staggering. But wealth on paper is not the same as prosperity in homes. Without vision, without policy, without courage, minerals remain just rocks. With vision, they become engines of transformation. Indonesia's journey in this century will hinge on how it treats its own treasures. And so, in this first chapter, we see both the promise and the problem. The promise of a land richer in critical resources than almost any other. The problem of a pattern repeated for centuries, raw goods leaving, finished goods returning, and the people in between wondering when the promise will be fulfilled. Yet history is not destiny. There are signs of change. New smelters are being built. Nickel processing plants rise along the coasts. Policies aim to keep more value at home. The question is whether these efforts can outpace old habits, corruption, and bureaucracy. The question is whether Indonesia can seize the moment while the world still needs what it has. This is the story of Act 1, a land of endless wealth at a crossroads. A country with the power to fuel the future, but not yet the system to claim its full share. In the next act, we travel back in time, to Indonesia's golden past, to understand how a civilization once led the world, and how it might lead again. To understand Indonesia's future, we must walk back through its past. Long before the word Indonesia existed, these islands were known to the world. Traders called them the Nusa Antara, the islands in between, a string of stepping stones linking two mighty oceans and two vast continents. On Sumatra's coasts, the Srivijaya Empire flourished from the 7th to the 13th century. Its fleets controlled the Malacca Strait. Its monasteries drew scholars from India and China. Gold and spices poured through its ports. Srivijaya was not a backwater, it was a beacon. Centuries later, on Java, the Majapahit kingdom rose. Its power stretched across most of the archipelago. Poets wrote of unity long before modern nationalism. Palaces and courts patronized arts, architecture, and law. Even today, the national motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, unity in diversity, comes from a Majapahit poem. Walk among the carved stones of Borobudur at dawn. 9 stacked platforms crowned by a great stupa. Relief panels telling the life of the Buddha, carved 1,000 years ago. This is not a minor temple, it is the largest Buddhist monument on earth, built with such precision that modern engineers still marvel. Or stand before Prambanan, its spires piercing the sky like frozen flames, a testament to Hindu Java's splendor. For centuries, sailors from Arabia, India, China, Portugal, and the Netherlands converged here. They came for nutmeg, cloves, pepper, spices once worth their weight in gold. But they also brought ideas, languages, religions. Out of this swirl, Indonesia's mosaic culture was born, gamelan music and shadow puppets, batik and ikat, epics recited beside mosques and temples. Today, millions of tourists know only Bali. They see rice terraces, beaches, temples, and think they have seen Indonesia. But Bali is a single note in a symphony. Beyond it lie Raja Ampat's coral gardens, the most biodiverse reefs on the planet. Bromo's sunrise, where clouds turn volcanic peaks into islands in a sea of mist. Tanah Toraja's ancestral houses shaped like boats, where funerary rites tell of journeys to the afterlife. Lake Toba's vast caldera, where a supervolcano once reshaped the world. Tourism alone could rival any industry, if nurtured with vision, sustainability, and transparency. But too often, the sector remains underdeveloped. Airports struggle to handle arrivals. Infrastructure lags behind potential. Investors hesitate. Local communities sometimes see only the crumbs of a feast. Yet models exist. In Yogyakarta, heritage tourism sustains craftspeople who carve and weave. In Lombok, community-based resorts employ and train local youth. In Papua, eco-lodges protect reefs while funding schools. These are seeds of a different approach, one that shares benefits widely and safeguards nature. Indonesia's cultural soft power is not limited to tourism. Its music, its food, its design are global ambassadors. The haunting notes of a suling flute, the snap of a wayang kulit puppet, the swirl of sambal on a plate, these speak to something timeless and alive. In an age when nations compete not only with armies and factories but with stories, Indonesia holds a trove of stories still untold. Think of South Korea's K-pop, Japan's anime, Thailand's cuisine. They are more than entertainment, they are industries generating billions and shaping perception. Indonesia has the raw material for its own wave, films rooted in local legends, fashion inspired by batik and tenun, music blending gamelan with global beats. What is missing is not talent but investment, coordination, and vision. Tourism and culture are not luxuries. They are economic engines and nation-branding tools. They create jobs that cannot be outsourced, pride that cannot be imported. When done well, they also build bridges, between islands, between communities, between Indonesia and the world. But just as with minerals, the pattern repeats: raw beauty exported, finished experiences imported. International chains dominate. Local communities receive a fraction. Unless the model changes, the promise will slip away. Yet change is possible. With digital marketing, local entrepreneurs can reach travelers directly. With training and microfinance, villages can develop ecotourism without losing their soul. With clear rules and enforcement, natural wonders can be protected for generations. With festivals and creative hubs, Indonesian art can travel far beyond its shores. This is the second chapter of our journey. A land of ancient empires and endless stories, standing at another crossroads. Will Indonesia's heritage become a living engine of prosperity, or a museum piece fading behind glass? As we leave the temples and reefs behind, our path turns to the present's harder truths. In the next act, we confront the obstacles, corruption, bureaucracy, and lost opportunities that have slowed Indonesia's rise, and explore how these challenges might yet be overcome. Every great journey meets resistance. For Indonesia, the resistance is not only geography, but the invisible walls of policy, trust, and habit. In this act we look, with honesty and empathy, at the barriers that have slowed the archipelago's rise. The first is corruption, not as a single villain but as 1,000 small cuts. It is the bribe to speed up a permit, the misused public fund, the quiet favor for a cousin. Each act may seem minor, but together they erode confidence. Investors hesitate. Projects stall. Citizens grow cynical. Without trust, even the richest soil cannot bear fruit. Next is bureaucracy. Indonesia is a nation of islands, each with its own government layers, rules, and rhythms. Permits can take months. Infrastructure projects crawl. Entrepreneurs with ideas give up or go abroad. The energy of youth is lost to paperwork. While neighbors simplify procedures, Indonesia's red tape still tangles dreams. Infrastructure itself is another hurdle. In Java's cities, traffic clogs arteries like cholesterol. In remote provinces, roads turn to mud in the rainy season. Electricity flickers. Internet speeds lag. How can a digital economy grow when a connection drops mid-upload? How can factories thrive if ports are congested and ships delayed? Education, too, remains uneven. In some cities, international standard schools nurture innovators. In rural areas, classrooms are overcrowded, teachers undertrained, resources thin. Young Indonesians are eager to learn, but the ladder is broken in places. Without a solid education system, the dream of a knowledge economy stays a dream. Another obstacle is over-reliance on commodities. When prices for coal or palm oil or nickel rise, budgets swell. When they fall, deficits grow. This boom and bust cycle makes long-term planning hard. Diversifying into manufacturing, technology, and creative industries is vital, but progress has been slow. All these issues combine to push talent away. The brightest engineers, designers, and scientists often seek opportunities abroad. Brain drain is not only a loss of people, it is a loss of possibility. Each departure is a silent vote of no confidence. And yet, to speak of these problems is not to surrender to them. It is to name them so they can be solved. Corruption is not a permanent trait, it is a behavior that can be deterred with transparency, digital systems, and strong enforcement. Bureaucracy can be reformed. Infrastructure can be built. Education can be transformed. Other nations have done it, Indonesia can too. There are already signs of movement. The Corruption Eradication Commission, or KPK, has investigated and prosecuted high-profile cases. E-government initiatives have cut down on middlemen. New highways and metro systems are under construction. Ports are being modernized. Fiber optic cables now snake along the seafloor linking remote islands to the web. These are green shoots, but they need nurturing. In telling this part of the story, we must remember that Indonesia is vast and diverse. Progress in one region may be invisible in another. A success in Jakarta may not yet reach Maluku. A policy in Aceh may not fit Bali. Solutions must be as varied as the islands themselves. Most of all, change requires courage, from leaders to resist old temptations, from citizens to demand better, from businesses to invest in long-term gains rather than quick profits. Without that courage, the obstacles will remain walls. With it, they become hurdles that can be cleared. So in this third chapter, we have walked through the shadows: corruption, bureaucracy, infrastructure gaps, brain drain, over-reliance on commodities. These are not comfortable topics, but they are essential. We cannot talk about awakening a giant without talking about what keeps it asleep. But the story does not end in despair. In the next act, we will meet the faces of a new generation, the young Indonesians who are coding apps in small towns, installing solar panels on village schools, building startups in garages, and fighting for transparency in local councils. They are already writing the next chapter. They are already stirring the giant. The sun rises over Jakarta's skyline. From above, you see cranes, roads, a river of motorcycles, and clusters of young people streaming into offices, schools, and co-working spaces. More than half of Indonesia's population is under 30. This is not just a statistic, it is a force of nature. They are digital natives, born with smartphones in their hands and a global internet at their fingertips. They speak not only Bahasa Indonesia, but the language of code, design, and collaboration. They do not remember the old empires of Srivijaya or Majapahit, but they carry the same spirit of connection and trade. In Bandung, small startups experiment with e-commerce, health tech, and logistics. In Yogyakarta, creative collectives blend traditional batik patterns with augmented reality. In Makassar, student engineers build solar-powered boats for inter-island transport. These are not headlines, but they are happening, quietly, persistently, reshaping the country from the ground up. Across the islands, renewable energy projects light up villages. Micro-hydro turbines spin in mountain streams. Solar panels gleam on school roofs. Local engineers design apps to monitor fish stocks, track floods, teach languages. Civil society groups train citizens to demand transparency and to use digital tools to monitor budgets. This is the Indonesia that rarely makes the news, an archipelago of innovators who refuse to wait for permission. They are solving problems their own communities face, from waste management to disaster response. They are building a different narrative, one of agency, not dependency. Government programs have begun to support this wave. 100 Smart Cities initiatives connect mayors with technologists. Coding bootcamps teach rural youth to freelance online. Universities partner with international research centers. Diaspora Indonesians return to mentor startups. Each program is a brick in a bridge between potential and prosperity. But the energy is not only in technology. In the arts, a new generation of filmmakers, musicians, and writers is emerging. They mix gamelan with hip-hop, folklore with graphic novels, wayang with web series. They speak to the world in a global idiom while rooted in their islands. This is soft power in the making. Consider the young activists in Kalimantan planting trees on degraded land, the student journalists exposing corruption in their local councils, the women entrepreneurs in Lombok running co-ops for weaving and ecotourism, the fishermen in Maluku using blockchain to prove sustainable catches. These are not isolated stories but threads in a larger tapestry. For decades, Indonesia exported raw materials and imported ideas. This generation wants to reverse that, to export ideas and finished products, to keep value at home. They see the country not as a quarry but as a workshop, not as a market but as a maker. Challenges remain. Startups need capital. Schools need teachers. Infrastructure needs to catch up. But the direction is clear: a grassroots innovation culture is taking root. If it is nurtured, with policy, investment, and trust, it could become the engine that powers Indonesia's leap. This youthful energy is also political. More young Indonesians are running for local office, campaigning on anti-corruption platforms, using social media to mobilize. They are impatient with old ways of doing business. They want results, transparency, fairness. In their impatience lies hope. In this fourth act, we meet a generation that could be Indonesia's greatest asset. They are not waiting for a savior. They are building solutions. They are the living proof that the sleeping giant is stirring from within. As we move to the next act, we step back from individual stories and ask, what would it take, at the national level, to turn this energy into a sustained transformation? What blueprint could harness Indonesia's youth, its resources, and its heritage into a single force for greatness? We have seen Indonesia's riches. We have walked through its temples and reefs. We have listened to the hopes of its young. Now the question is not, what does Indonesia have, but what will Indonesia do? In this act, we imagine a blueprint for greatness, not as fantasy, but as a series of choices within reach. First, build the foundations. Infrastructure is destiny. High-speed rail can shrink islands. Modern ports can cut export times. Reliable electricity and broadband can unlock rural potential. Roads, trains, and cables are not glamorous, but they are the veins through which opportunity flows. Without them, even the brightest ideas suffocate. Second, invest in people. A nation of 280 million cannot depend on a few elite schools. It needs an education revolution. Teacher training, digital curricula, vocational institutes linked to industry, scholarships for science and technology, language programs that open the world. When young Indonesians see a path from a village classroom to a global career without leaving home, the brain drain slows. Third, reform governance. Digitalize permits. Publish budgets. Protect whistleblowers. Reward honest officials. Make it easier to start a business than to pay a bribe. Transparency is not only morality, it is economics. Investors go where rules are clear. Citizens thrive where justice is predictable. Fourth, move up the value chain. Stop shipping raw nickel, build batteries. Stop exporting crude palm oil, refine it sustainably. Use coal profits to finance renewables. Create industrial parks where mining, processing, research, and manufacturing sit side by side. Train local engineers to lead, not just assist. This is how a quarry becomes a workshop, and a workshop becomes an innovation hub. Fifth, champion sustainable tourism and culture. Protect reefs and forests as national treasures. Certify and support community-based tourism. Market not just Bali but 1,000 destinations. Fund films, music, design, and cuisine as export industries. Tell Indonesia's stories to the world, not as folklore, but as living culture. Sixth, unleash green technology. Indonesia's geography gives it geothermal power, tidal flows, solar belts, and vast biomass. With investment and partnerships, it can become a renewable energy leader, not a laggard. It can power its own growth and export clean solutions to neighbors. This is not charity, it is smart economics in a warming world. 7th, mobilize finance and the diaspora. Encourage pension funds to invest in startups. Offer bonds for infrastructure. Create channels for Indonesians abroad to invest in local ventures. Money follows trust, trust follows transparency. A virtuous circle can be built. 8th, build bridges, not walls. Indonesia sits at the heart of ASEAN and between two oceans. It can be a hub for regional trade, research, and diplomacy. By partnering with neighbors instead of competing on the lowest cost, it can climb the ladder faster. Collaboration breeds resilience. This blueprint is not a single mega project. It is 1,000 coordinated steps. Each step reinforces the other. Infrastructure without education is underused. Education without jobs fuels migration. Jobs without governance breed corruption. But together, infrastructure, education, governance, industry, culture, green energy, they form a flywheel of progress. The good news is that many of these steps have already begun. Smelters are being built. Startup accelerators are sprouting. Metro systems are opening. Young leaders are campaigning on transparency. The question is not whether Indonesia can change, but whether it can sustain change long enough to transform itself. In this 5th act, we have drawn a map, not as outsiders prescribing, but as observers connecting what Indonesians themselves are already doing. This is not a dream imposed from abroad, it is a mirror of possibilities already shimmering in the archipelago. And so, as we move to our final act, we leave the blueprint and return to the human story. We will look at the faces of those who will inherit this land, children, workers, entrepreneurs, and end with a call not of despair but of hope. The sleeping giant is not only stirring, it is beginning to stand.